Through 3 preseason games, Tyrese Maxey is averaging 20 points per game in just 17 minutes and has hit 67% of his 3-pointers, making Philadelphia buzz. Many think he may be taking that leap into all-star territory, which would take the 76ers to an entirely different level. But what are his strengths and weaknesses on both ends of the floor? Which areas can he improve upon and grow to take that next step? And just how good is he right now? When watching Maxey play, the first thing that immediately stands out to me is the sheer speed and acceleration. He's easily one of the fastest players in the NBA and can reach that top velocity very quickly. It's this on-floor explosiveness that serves as a base for his offensive attack, just blowing by defenders seemingly at will and darting deep into the heart of the defense on drives. His first step is unrivaled, and he'll use hesitations, jab steps, and crossovers to create these slight moments where defenders pause or move just enough for him to turn on the jets and leave them in the dust. Just as quickly as he can reach that top speed, he can also stop on a dime, and it's this jarring unpredictability that fuels his ability to do damage in the paint. Despite how fast everything happens, he always remains in control, almost thriving off of chaos, which makes him a nightmare in the open floor. When he has a running start, there's almost nothing a defense can do to slow that momentum, and he's really creative when pushing the ball in transition like this, which again makes him so unpredictable. Because he isn't grabbing many defensive rebounds or racking up tons of steals, in these spots he's almost like a wide receiver, positioning himself as a target relative to whoever has the ball, or just leaking out ahead of everyone for deep outlets. With that being said, his approach isn't at all rushed. When the game slows down, he can play with patience and slower pace. He does lack some directionality, meaning he doesn't utilize much left and right movement to carve out more angles, but he occasionally makes great use of his ability to get around his matchup by putting defenders in jail and keeping his dribble live. As a finisher, he's very underhand dominant, using lots of different scoops, reverses, and high arcing finger rolls off the glass that do have benefits but also drawbacks. This allows him to get the ball up off the floor and to the basket really quickly, which helps him score through tight windows of opportunity, but it also hurts when trying to get the ball over or around rim protectors. He avoids this as much as possible by utilizing his length, often taking that extra step through or across the lane, which at that speed covers tons of ground. He can also finish through contact at a pretty decent level despite not having much size, but I do think he tends to dodge it a bit too much, hurting his free throw rates, which I believe is a key area for growth. He pairs this interior scoring with some nice counters in the short mid-range area. His floater is already really polished and one of his most effective shots, and although his pull-up jumper didn't fall quite as much as you would want, the overall willingness and fluidity bode well, along with how much better it's looked so far in the preseason. Of course, the ability to get deep into the defense like this and score in various ways is going to draw some extra attention, opening up a fair amount of opportunities for him to capitalize as a playmaker. He's not the type to consistently make a ton of high-level reads or manipulate defenses by mixing in tons of different deliveries, but he also doesn't force or rush any decisions, almost never turning the ball over as a result. He can mask those scoop layups as soft touch lobs over the top. He'll occasionally take those extra dribbles deep in the lane to create dump-offs and layup passes, and he can kick it out to shooters. He doesn't have much cross-court capability, and his height does hurt his vision, but any attempt to help one pass away will be punished. It's not just teammates that this slashing opens up either, but also the rest of his game on the perimeter. Despite being viewed as a potential weakness coming into the league, he's developed into a really strong pull-up three-point shooter. He's got that fluid motion I earlier mentioned, allowing him to pull the trigger coming off of screens or in transition, and he can also do it on the move or off balance. He leverages the threat of that explosive first step well to create separation, using step backs, side sidesteps and hesitations to buy himself just a bit more time on the release. On this one, he's got the switch against a much slower LaMarcus Aldridge. He uses that between the legs hezzy dribble to force Aldridge into sagging off and overplaying the drive, then takes advantage with the step back triple. Most of these looks are created in the pick and roll, where his overall scoring arsenal forces the defense into some tough decisions. If his man chooses to go under the screen, he can burn them from deep. If they go over or switch, then you're left dealing with that explosive driving, and the combination of pull-up shooting and threat of penetration again warrants extra help. This is why his growth as a playmaker is so important. He's already good at shoveling the ball at high speeds to rollers and cutters, but if he can get a bit more decisive with his reads and anticipate openings, he can generate a ton of open shots for teammates after forcing those rotations. This rounds out a pretty nice arsenal with the ball in his hands that continues to grow and develop with every single game, but it's how well he also plays away from it that makes him so special to me. He's not the type of off-ball player who's running around and bending the defense with non-stop movement, but brings lots of value as a shooter. Last season, he hit over 45% of his threes off the catch, and the shot versatility is very apparent. He sprays from all over the floor, with range, and they'll occasionally use him as a decoy screener for slips to the outside. This shooting, along with those quick bursts of speed, allow him to absolutely destroy closeouts, almost always attacking right off the catch. He can jab and rip through for more time on threes, or go to a one dribble pull-up in the mid-range, but he's usually taking advantage of these opportunities by generating more paint touches. All it takes is just the slightest attempt to help off of him, or lapse in awareness, and he's gone, completely breaking down defenses in these situations. On this play, Harden is setting up for an isolation on Aaron Gordon. Will Barton takes just one step over from his position to cover the nail. Maxey receives the pass with just 2.1 seconds on the shot clock, and he's so fast that he's able to get both feet in the paint and kick it to a wide open shooter in just that microscopic window. This skill set is what makes him such a lethal weapon when playing next to an elite playmaker like Harden. In 559 minutes together last season, he scored just under 19 points per 75 possessions on an absurd 71.5% true shooting that included 77% at the rim and 49% from 3. Philly had a near 123 offensive rating in these minutes, and although the sample is still relatively small, the fit is clearly there. I would still like to see just a bit more from him off the ball. For example, I think there's loads of potential for him to become one of the league's most lethal cutters, but that's more of a bonus than a true necessity. Overall, I think he's a perfect fit as the 76ers' number 3 offensive guy and number 2 perimeter creator, who, when needed, can ramp up his scoring to that next level and vary between roles as a play finisher next to Harden or pick and roll ball handler with Embiid. Before we get into his play on the defensive end, I want to give a quick shout out to Basketball Index for helping with this analysis and the making of this video. If you're not familiar with the site, they provide tons of statistical measurements, tools, and easily accessible graphics to further guide your understanding of the sport. They offer talent grades on pretty much any aspect you can think of, and through their player profiles tab, I can easily compare them to other players around the league. Using Tyrese Maxey's 3-point shooting as an example, on this page I'm presented with various metrics detailing his ability to create and make these shots, along with how he stacks up against his peers. This is just one of the many useful tools found on the site that help guide me and many others through their analysis, and by signing up with the code VENUE30, you can get 30% off your first month subscription. I'll leave a link in the description below for anyone interested in signing up, and with that being said, let's take a look at Tyrese Maxey's defense. Due to a lack of size, there are some apparent limitations. Small guards are just vulnerable to matchup hunting from bigger creators, whether that means shooting right over him, going through him downhill, or taking advantage in the post. You'll commonly see these younger players put on weight and strength to mitigate some of these issues, which is clearly a point of emphasis in Maxey's development. He does have that length and foot speed that allow him to stay in front of the ball, even with quick changes of direction, and although there is some room for technical growth, I don't hate how he navigates through screens when Philly's running their deep drop. He's active and engaged away from the ball, but his age does show with overhelping, late closeouts, or missed rotations, and he's not the type to get active with his hands and make a ton of plays in lanes. With that being said, as just a second-year player, the energy, buying in, and willingness to play with high activity and effort are huge for me, and although I do view him as a negative on that end of the floor for now, there is a clear path to becoming a neutral or even adding value in the near future. So where does that leave him as an overall player? In 2022, I thought of him as a sub-all-star level guy, clearly adding some meaningful value to a team with championship aspirations, and I expect him to expand upon that quite a bit in this upcoming season, emerging as a candidate for most improved player. He's a perfect fit next to the duo of James Harden and Joel Embiid, along with the city of Philadelphia in general, and at just 21 years old, entering his third season, I believe Tyrese Maxey is a star in the making. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out my website, podcast, and social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you think of Tyrese Maxey and just how good you believe he is. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.